A night there was when winter died, then all alone she sang and cried, and danced until the dawn of spring, and chanted some wild thing that stirred him, till at last it broke the bonds that held him, and he woke from dreaming deep and cold despair. He strayed out into the night air, and the hillock green he stepped upon, but the elven sheen was sudden gone. The hill abandoned, she had fled away, but now his feet were sped, and as she went he swiftly came, and called her with the tender name of nightingales in elven tongue, that all the woods now sudden rung, Tinuviel, Tinuviel, and clear his voice was as a bell, its echoes wove a binding spell. Tinuviel, Tinuviel, his voice such love and longing filled, one moment stood she, fear was stilled, one moment without fear or shame, one moment only Beren came, and as she stood there shimmering, her grey eyes danced a glimmering. In Doriath, bound in a spell, then doom fell on Tinuviel, and Beren caught that elven maid, fair Lúthien, whom love delayed.
Alright guys, you're listening to Keep On Tolkien.
Welcome back.
This is episode 8. We're going to be talking about some pretty exciting stuff today.
Yeah, we're actually very excited about this. At least I am.
I'm super excited.
I feel like we didn't build this up at all in any of the previous episodes.
We should have hyped it.
I wanted to hype this, but we're super excited today. We're going to start getting into the 3 major tales of the First Age. We decided it was about time.
Mm-hmm.
And these are some of the most fun tales, I guess, that you get out of the Silmarillion.
Yeah. And this one in particular is very uplifting.
Mm-hmm. Of the 3.
Of the 3, because the other 2 are fucking sad.
Actually, they're quite tragic.
Yeah.
So the first one is actually one of the oldest tales that Tolkien wrote. And you can tell by reading it, it's a lot more fairy tale-like.
Right, yeah, there's a lot of magic and stuff in this episode.
It's going to be so much fun.
It's so much fun.
And that's the tale of Beren and Lúthien.
So yeah, and we're going to start out by talking about our one of our main characters here, Beren. So in order to talk about Beren, you have to talk a little bit about the House of Beor, and by way of Barahir, Beren's father. The story of Barahir really, at least the part that matters for this story, starts at the Dagor Braquilach, which is that's the Battle of Sudden Flame. It's one of the 5 battles of Beleriand.
It's a pretty dark time.
6 battles, excuse me. Right?
It's the beginning of the dark times for Beleriand. I think we touched on this in the Melkor episode.
Yeah, we did.
Episode 5.
Mm-hmm.
But especially this one, the Battle of Sudden Flame, really marks the beginning of the dark times in Beleriand when Melkor got an upper hand. And right after the battle, most anyone that resisted was either pushed back or destroyed,
mm-hmm.
including the House of Beor.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, Barahir, who was head of the House of Beor at that time,
he's basically commanding the House of Beor in the battle here. And so what happens is north of Tol Sirion, our good friend who we've mentioned a few times before, Finrod Felagund, he is completely surrounded by enemy forces, and lo and behold, Barahir and the House of Beor come to the aid of Felagund, and they charge through, and they take heavy losses. Like a good chunk of them die, and they eventually break the line and they save Finrod's life, and for this he's eternally grateful. What does he do, Joel? As a sign of gratitude. Well,
as a sign of gratitude, Finrod Felagund gives Barahir the ring of his house, which is where you get the ring of Barahir. You might recognize that from the ring that Aragorn wears in the Third Age. It's one of the oldest objects around.
Right, and it's one of the most beautiful as well, because it's made in Valinor. It was made by the smiths over there, and like you don't really get better than Noldor Smiths in Valinor.
It's about as good as it gets.
So yeah, he gives Barahir his ring, which is the sigil of his house, and he swears an oath to always aid and be friends with the House of Beor and the sons of Barahir. Well, the lineage of Barahir rather. And he swears this oath, and that pretty much seals the fate of one of the main objects of the story here that's about to come up.
So after the battle, and after the events of Barahir saving Finrod Felagund, Barahir is kind of leading a rebellion.
Yeah, like a small group of, I guess you could say insurgents. I don't know if we want to use that word, but yeah, they're insurgents.
Yeah, it was 12 men, including his son, Beren, who you'll recognize as one of the main characters of the story, Beren and Lúthien. And they're just being general badasses, and they're hanging around Dorthonion, now called Tarnu Fuin because it's a dark place. And they're just kind of fucking up Melkor's armies as they go.
Yeah, they're doing as much as they can to hinder any movement of the enemy through that region. And Morgoth hears about it, and he's not happy. So he sets who else but Sauron on to do the job here. He says, Sauron, I want you to deal with this Barahir guy and his house because he's a thorn in my side, and I need him done.
So Sauron goes down there, and they're very hard to find. This group of 12 men that Barahir's leading, they're really good at the whole attack and hide business. It's their land, and so as Sauron does, he goes for more trickery, and he singles out one of the men whose name comes to be known as Gorlim the Unhappy. He basically tricks this guy through a series of events thinking that his beloved wife might still be alive.
Right, yeah, because his house was broken into and his wife was gone, and he thought that she might still be alive. So Sauron gives him this like hallucination or dreamlike state where he sees his wife in captivity. So from then on, he believes that she's alive.
Yeah, and Sauron uses that as leverage to get out of the guy where Barahir's men are hiding. And then, lo and behold, he lets the guy know, your wife has been dead this whole time, and you're going to die too. And it says that he dies pretty cruelly.
It says cruelly. Yeah,
they don't get into detail, but it's pretty bad.
He said he put him to death cruelly. So we can imagine if it's cruel by Sauron standards,
it's pretty bad.
It was probably pretty messed up.
So, as you can probably expect, this leads to the downfall of that group of men. One night while Beren is actually out and about, I believe he's gathering food or hunting.
Yeah, he's doing some adventurous stuff.
And the band of orcs come across Barahir's 11 other men, and they're all slaughtered in the night. All
killed. And they actually cut off the hand of Barahir, and they take it with them, including the ring.
And so as soon as Beren comes back and finds that this has happened, he's not only just totally crushed, but he's furious. And it should be stated that the guys from the House of Beor are pretty big.
Yeah.
They're big men. Like, they're brawlers. So Beren's a big guy.
Yeah.
And he tracks down the group of orcs, and he slaughters all of them.
Kills them all.
All of them.
In their camp.
And he takes his father's hand back, and he takes the ring. And then he kind of goes into rampage mode for a while after that, where all he does is by himself running around that part of town down in Dorthonion.
Just killing orcs.
Literally just slaying.
Just killing whatever orc he can find. Yeah, and eventually he goes through a lot of these trials, and he sort of wanders his way down into Doriath, which we're going to get into a little bit here. Tell you a little bit about the realm of Doriath.
So, yes, he eventually gets driven out and he goes south towards the kingdom of Doriath. We haven't talked a whole lot about Doriath in the past episodes. We may have mentioned it.
Yeah, we've mentioned it a few times, but we
haven't really gone into it. So, throughout the past episodes, we've talked about a lot of the kingdoms of the Noldor. We've talked about Nargothrond. We've talked about Gondolin. We've said some fun stuff. But Doriath is one of the major kingdoms in Beleriand that's not of the Noldor. It's the major kingdom of the Sindar.
The Sindar, yeah.
And
So and it's run by a guy we actually already know from the Sundering of the Elves episode, Elwë, who was the first leader of the Teleri.
Yeah, the three houses of the elves that want to go on the trip. He was the leader of the Teleri. He went to Valinor,
He
came
went
back.
there as an emissary, yeah. Which makes him, if you guys are keeping score at home for this elf shit, he is the only Calaquendi Sindar, which means he's the only Sindar to have ever seen the light of the trees.
Yep. He decided not to go in the end, but
Yeah.
he had gone initially to
And
see what it was about. So he did see it, and he decided not to go. What does it
And
say
why did
about
he
him?
decide not to go? Remember, we're about to get into it. Yeah, because he meets Melian, this Maiar, the female Maiar, and they kind of like fall into a trance with each other.
Yeah, they fall in love the instant they look at each other. One day out in the woods, they come across each other, and they're lost in a trance for like years and years.
For years and years.
And nobody knows where they went, so they just go on with their lives.
To the point where a lot of the Sindar who did stay and decided not to go was because they were looking for Elwë. Like, they had lost him, so they weren't about to leave without their king. So a lot of them stayed behind.
And that's how they became the Kingdom of Sindar. In the kingdom's name is Doriath. Now, Doriath is located in the center of Beleriand.
Pretty much right in the middle.
Literally right in the middle. We can throw up a map for some reference. There's just a giant forest, and in the middle of it is the capital city called Menegroth.
The Thousand Caves.
And it's called that because it consists of many, many caves.
Many, many caves, yeah. It was actually originally a dwarf thing, was it not?
I believe it was an old dwarven stronghold.
Yeah.
The dwarves had started it, and then they came across it and delved it a little bit deeper and turned it into an elven kingdom.
Yeah, and it's one of the more beautiful
Apparently.
kingdoms. Yeah, and yeah, it was so Melian the Maiar. She is the queen essentially of this realm, and so she put up this magical barrier called the Girdle of Melian, and that allowed nobody. It was a series of enchantments that helped keep people out, essentially. In that, if you weren't of Doriath, you didn't really know how to get out and back in.
Right, because especially after the Noldor came back, that's what brought a lot of the trouble. I mean, they're really where the trouble comes from. They're the ones that have the main beef and the Curse of Mandos. You know, all that stuff going on with Melkor, and they're the ones that are always fighting, even amongst themselves.
Yeah, even they can't even get along with each other.
But so the Sindar are more or less just not willing to put up with it. So they have Melian put up the Girdle of Melian around the entirety of Doriath, which keeps any evil from being able to wander in. And I think it's supposed to keep out men too. People
just mortals in
aren't
general.
supposed to be able to find it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a backstory on Doriath. They're a pretty big place. They're probably one of the most established kingdoms in.
Oh yeah,
Beleriand.
and it's older than.
It's older than the rest.
Than
of them.
Nargothrond and Gondolin and all these.
Because it was
Noldor
around
cities.
first. That's why Sindarin is the main elven language, because Doriath has been around forever. But moving forward, the people in Doriath, they were just trying to stay out of all the fights with Morgoth, and they refused to take part in any of the wars, and they lived in more or less blissful peace, which is where we meet Lúthien, living in Doriath in blissful peace.
So Lúthien is the only daughter of Thingol and Melian, so which means she's part elf and part Maiar. So she can do some pretty cool stuff. She's
Part elf that had seen the light of the trees.
Right.
As well.
So yeah, she's got that extra boost, that that plus 10.
Plus 10 stamina.
Plus 10 stamina.
Maybe plus 10 magicka.
Maybe Constitution. Maybe, I don't know. These are all D&D things we argue about.
So she's quite magical on her own. Of the elves, they say that she is the most enchanting. She's got a voice that is known to be just heartbreakingly beautiful. And her songs were known to lay enchantments as well. So she's pretty magical amongst the elves. It's said that when she sings, winter also melts into spring. And aside from singing, she also liked to dance a lot in the woods to the music of a character called Darien, who they were friends. He loved her, but
he was in love with her, but he was like a minstrel.
He was a really good minstrel.
He was like one of the great minstrels. They say even I was just reading earlier today that he's even better than Maglor.
So he's supposed to be pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and Maglor's like the best musician.
So
of all the elves.
that's what Lúthien would do. Her, and Daron, excuse me. I don't know if I'm
I
pronouncing
think it's
that right.
Daron. That's how I
Daron.
say it, yeah. Daron.
They would go out into the woods all the time in Doriath, and Daron would play, and she would dance and sing, and it was just enchanting. And that is how Beren first came across Lúthien. As he's fleeing, more or less, from Dorthonion or Tal Norfuin, from all this evil shit. I mean, his dad was slaughtered. Everyone he knew was killed after this battle, and he's just been going around killing orcs, and he got pushed out south. And not only did he wander all the way to Doriath, but he had to get to Doriath. He had to go through a very evil part of Beleriand.
Right. And they say there's giant spiders there.
They say when Ungoliant was last seen, when she traveled south across Beleriand and left, the scene of the story, she left some of her offspring in that area, and so it's been known to be like just a really dark place. The mountains of are those the shadowy mountains?
The mountains of
I think that's a different mountain.
They're the mountains
anyway,
of fear. Is that what they're called?
It might be.
I think so. Yeah.
But
mountains of terror.
He went through a lot of bad shit to get through here. It's kind of like the Bermuda's Triangle of evil in Beleriand. Like people get lost in there if you go in there and you can't find your way. And somehow he wanders through there, and not only that, but he wanders through the girdle of Melian and into the forests of Doriath. And this guy is just—he's
in bad shape.
He's in very bad shape. Like he's insane at this point. He hasn't been eating well. He's been running for weeks, and then he just comes across the most beautiful image and the most beautiful singing that he can possibly imagine, and he's just entranced.
Yeah, and so he listens to Lúthien for quite a while. Kind of stalks her a little bit. Doesn't say much. Doesn't say really anything. But then eventually he starts to sing back to her, and he names her Tinuviel, which is Sindarin for nightingale.
So she's initially afraid. They don't see men in Doriath. They're not really supposed to be there. So they run from Beren initially when they see that he's there. And so he spends a lot of time trying to find them again. He's there from, I believe it's summer until the following spring. And then he finally sees her again at the end of winter. She's out singing, melting the winter away back into spring. And this time he runs out and he calls to her. And he doesn't know what her name is, so he just calls her Tinuviel, Nightingale. And she stops, and she's just entranced by it. And he actually gets to run up to her and meet her, and they fall in love.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Just like Thingol and Melian, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is kind of fucked up, because later on in the story, as you'll see, Thingol's not too down with all this. Even though he fell in love at first sight as well.
And they say as soon as they fell in love, doom fell upon Lúthien. And sometimes when they use the term doom in Tolkien, it's kind of up in the air.
It's like a strong fate.
Yeah, it's like a synonym for your fate or your destiny. But sometimes it has a darker tone to it, like in this, because this does mean her doom.
Yeah, literally her doom. And the doom of Doriath and everything.
Oh, and we'll get
to that. We'll get there, guys.
God, you guys, this story is so rich. So they fall in love, and naturally, it's not a popular thing. They just kind of meet secretly in the woods for a while until eventually Daron turns them in to Thingol, Lúthien's dad, and he's pretty furious about this.
Yeah, and he's all ready to kill Beren. He's down to just murder him. And Lúthien eventually she gets him to swear an oath that he will neither kill Beren nor capture him and keep him prisoner. So he reluctantly agrees to this oath and all right. And then she brings him in as an honored guest to meet before the king.
And naturally, he's not happy about that. He's not trying to honor this guy in any way. He wanted to kill him initially. And so the king is pretty upset. And he mocks Beren to his face while just kind of asking them what's going on.
Calls him a thief.
And he just when he actually asks Thingol if he can marry Lúthien, they all laugh at him. They literally burst out laughing at Beren.
Yeah, they're they are amused. So yeah, and Beren originally when he gets there, he's too awestricken to speak. Like he's
This is his first time being in.
yeah, being in Menegroth, like,
and it's beautiful.
and it's beautiful. So like he's like he doesn't even say anything.
He also sees a Maya for the first time.
Right, he sees Melian for the first time. Yeah, and so he's like struck dumb essentially. And Lúthien speaks for him, and she says that this is Beren, son of Beren here. We actually sing songs about this guy.
Like they're an honorable house. You should have respect.
Yeah, have some respect.
But then he just continues to mock him further and ultimately, in a sassy way says, you can't have my daughter, by telling him, hey, if you want to marry Lúthien, I want you to give me a Silmaril from Morgoth's Iron Crown in exchange.
Yeah.
If you think that she's worth any price, then that's the price.
Mm-hmm.
Him full well knowing that just is either impossible or it's going to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
But then that absolutely infuriates Beren because he knows that they're mocking him.
Right. And, it's just a rude thing to do, just assign somebody an impossible task. It's kind of like in that episode of South Park when Kyle's mom tells him he can go to the Raging Pussies concert if he brings peace to the Middle East. And he does, and then they're salty about it. They still won't let him go. Anyway, it's a great episode. But it's essentially that kind of task.
It's a very good analogy, yeah.
Yeah, like it is the impossible task, and Beren just kind of plays along. He's like, "Ha, so small a price for such a thing." Yeah, and he pretty much insults Thingol back to his face, like, "You want to trade your what you love above all else for a jewel, like something made by people." Like,
oh yeah, he comes to his senses and he gets pissed off about it. He's just right back in your face.
Yeah.
It's pretty fantastic. It's also said in the narration portion of the story that as soon as Thingol says that, as soon as he even mentions the Silmarillions, bring me a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown, he instantly intertwines himself with this curse of the Silmarils.
Yeah, this doom of
They
Mandos.
call it the doom of Mandos.
And Melian whispers in his ear, like, you just
Melian,
did that.
In that moment, I mean, Melian's a Maya. She can godlike.
See. Yeah, she
has foresight. And after he says that, she says to him, we don't want to be doing this. Like, we don't want anything to do with that. And sure as shit, I mean, he pissed off Beren to the point where he goes right on ahead and tries.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of think that Melian's complicit in this. Like, I think she let Beren in. Because they talk about earlier that there would be one person to get past there's a prophecy that one person will be able to get through, a mortal will be able to get through the girdle of Melian. And then Beren just kind of, it's just, not that he just strolled in or anything, but she knew about it. And so she's kind of like, I don't know if she's complicit, but she knows more than everyone else. And I think she knows that Beren and Lúthien are meant to be together. But
well, I'm sure she does. She has foresight.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, she's in a weird position throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
She could be, with all of her knowledge, having a bigger hand in the events here to help everything go better for everyone. But I guess she doesn't really. Well, she tries here. She's warning.
Yeah,
Thingol,
she's warning the shit out of
him. We don't even want any of this business here.
Yeah.
But he's pissed off, so he keeps on going with it. And sure as shit, he gets Beren to actually agree, and he storms out saying, "For a little price, I'll go get you one of these Silmarils."
Yeah, and he says goodbye to Lúthien and he leaves. And so that is actually going to lead us up to our newest episode of Minnesota Tolkien Theater, where you're going to pretty much hear
that story
as if it were in Minnesota.
So it's going to be the scene of Beren in the throne room of Thingol and Melian. Lúthien is there also, and they're just having this sassy back and forth.
And yeah, I apologize in advance. The female parts do not speak, and that is not because I didn't want them to speak. It was because we didn't have female voices to do
the parts.
So I skirted around it. I apologize. Maybe one day when we have more voices, we'll be able to do females.
If anybody wants to volunteer to be a voice on our radio,
right? If any females out there want to play some of the few female characters, that'd be cool. So yeah, and we got a new narrator this time. Well, he narrated last time too, actually. But Trevor Dunlap, and yeah, he's from Gamer Radio, our sister podcast, essentially. And yeah, he's going to come in and help us out. So this is Minnesota Tolkien radio drama. Enjoy.
It was in this time that the great adventurer and warrior, Beren, son of Barahir, found his way past the girdle of Melian and entered upon the kingdom of Doriath. There, in the woods, he came upon Lúthien, daughter of the king. After a time, the two fell deeply in love. Lúthien brought Beren to Menegroth, the Thousand Caves, to stand before King Thingol as her honored guest. Thingol swears an oath not to harm Beren, but his reception is cold.
Now you got a lot of nerve showing up here, unhappy mortal. You come here and enter my kingdom, you know? What are you, some kind of thief or something, huh?
Beren was too enthralled with the glory of Thingol's halls to speak. Lúthien explained to her father that this was indeed Beren, son of Barahir, whose deeds were put into song even by the elves.
Yeah, you know what? I don't really give a darn who you are, you know? You come here without my permission, and you know you're talking to my daughter. If I didn't swear an oath to bring you no harm, I would have chopped your head off head where you stand right now, you know what I mean?
Beren had finally remembered how to speak and replied proudly.
Hey, now, I'm not about to stand here and take this kind of verbal abuse from anyone, hey? Not even from an elven king in his own halls. I'm Beren, son of Barahir. I'm a friend of the elves, you know? And I've got Felagund's ring right here on my hand.
Beren lifted his hand to show the ring. The ring shone with the light of the stars of Varda, and its green gems gleamed with the magnificence only the smiths of Valinor can achieve. The room went silent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see your ring there. Your buddy Felagund over in Nargothrond. Well, alrighty then, how about you tell me why a mortal stands before me in the halls then, huh?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, how about it?
Alrighty then. How about this, hey? You know, your daughter is like the most beautiful thing I ever Galdarn seen. And I've been all over Beleriand, you know?
Oh, yeah, she sure is. Real pretty, yeah. Could you maybe get to the point here?
Oh, yeah. You know, me and your daughter here, we're in love, hey? And I'm here to ask her hand in marriage.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Thingol seems to give this some consideration. He smiled as he began to speak.
Alrighty then, mortal. How's about this? You can have my daughter, but first you gotta bring me something.
Oh, for sure. What's that then?
Well, how about this for a quest? You gotta bring me one Silmaril from the crown of Morgoth.
With that, the room fell silent.
Oh, yeah? Ha! Such a small price, you know? I thought you were going to say something super duper hard to get or something. You know, that sounds good to me, hey?
Beren once again lifted his hand. The ring of Barahir gleamed gloriously.
Right here, Thingol. Next time you see me, hey, I'll have one of them Silmarils right here in my hands.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And with that, Beren turned to leave.
Remember that, hey, right here in this hand. Well, alrighty then. I'm off to get one of them jewels for you. Yeah, you have yourself a good day there.
Thingol stared in disbelief. Beren was almost out of the door before he spoke.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you too there.
And with that, Beren set out on his most fateful quest.
Alrighty, yeah, that was Minnesota Tolkien radio drama. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We have special guest Trevor Dunlap there doing the narration. He's once again from our sister podcast, Gamer Radio. Find him on iTunes or SoundCloud, Gamer Radio.
So moving on with the story of Beren and Lúthien, we jump back in basically at the end of that scene. And Beren is on his way out, and he's furious. And the first thing he does when he leaves the Menegroth is he heads toward Nargothrond, which some of you may recall as the Noldor Kingdom.
Noldor Kingdom led by
Finrod Felagund.
Finrod Felagund, our buddy and favorite. Everyone loves him. That's the thing. They literally
great.
say he was the most beloved of the Sons of Finwë.
Mm-hmm.
So like everybody friggin' loved Felagund.
He's a fantastic guy.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. So Finrod Felagund, he's the king of Nargothrond, which is where we're about to go. There's actually a really cool scene when Beren finally starts to wander into like the realm of Nargothrond where the elves are hunting and stuff like that, he knows that they see him, but he does not see them. So he just holds up his hand with the ring on it, and he says, "I'm Beren, son of Barahir. Take me to the king." And they fucking do. They come out of wherever they're hiding, and they're like, "Oh, all right, let's take him to the king," because he looks pretty fucked up at this point still.
Yeah, he hasn't been having a good time. But he gets an audience with good old Finrod Felagund, everyone's favorite guy.
And Finrod immediately recognizes him. Like,
oh, right.
Ring or not, he says, like, I recognize you as Barahir's son.
And he confides in him about everything that's been going on with Lúthien, you know, everything that happened with the death of his people and his family, and basically his mission now to marry the one person that he loves most. And he calls on the oath that Finrod swore to the House of Barahir.
Which we talked about in the beginning of the episode with the ring. So Finrod at this point knows, he's like, ugh, shit, this is
bad news bears.
This is bad for me. and at this point also, we got two of the biggest assholes in the world living in Nargothrond.
So at the time, in Nargothrond, not only is there Finrod Felagund, but two sons of Feanor happen to be staying there at the time. And they're two of the biggest assholes
in the world.
In the entire world. And their names are Celegorm and Curufin.
And also Curufin's son, Celebrimbor, is living in Nargothrond at this time.
Oh, boy.
We know about Celebrimbor, right? He made the Rings of Power. We'll talk about it.
Real rich with characters.
Yeah.
But these two assholes, being sons of Feanor, they're some of the main people that have this beef with Morgoth about the Silmarils.
And they're trying to get them back constantly.
They have an oath that Feanor swore that they're trying to fulfill, that they will kill anyone to get those jewels, basically. So when they hear that that Beren is here, and he's asking the king to go help him get some Silmarils so he can give them
to us, Sindar.
Yeah, they're like, no way, Jose.
Yeah, no way, sir.
And they get all pissed off about it, and they even start to turn the people of Menegroth against
Nargothrond.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the people of Nargothrond, they've kind of created like a group of followers within a group of Feanorian followers within Nargothrond, and they kind of draw some water. So at this point, they're getting Finrod's like, well, I gotta go do this, and the people are like, they're starting to turn against him because the sons of Feanor are like, they're not about to help, obviously, because they're just spewing, they're cowards. Yeah,
they're spewing shit, turning people against the king because they don't like the idea of it. And eventually, Finrod Felagund gets so pissed off that he throws his crown on the floor, and he says, "You guys can be faithless to me, I guess, if you want, but I'm going to stay."
To break my oath.
Yeah, he says, "I'm going to stay true to my oath."
Because he is cool like that.
He's a real stand-up guy.
God, I love Finrod.
He's basically like the Eddard Stark.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. I see it.
I mean, I guess I find him to be a little cooler than Eddard Stark, but he's the same kind of guy, tragically to his word.
Yeah, to the point where it's to a fault, right?
Almost, just about.
Yeah, and so eventually Felagund and his posse, his best group of men, they leave Nargothrond, and they leave the crown to Orodreth, Felagund's little brother.
So when he left, they left with 10 other guys, including Beren. And they're all set to go all the way up, I guess, to Angband. And it was their mission to go get one of these Silmarils somehow. Now, on their way, they start heading up north from Nargothrond. They end up running into a band of orcs. Just kind of right off the bat, because orcs are a thing nowadays. After the after the Battle of Sudden Flame, like we said, it's dark times. Orcs are roaming, and they take this to their advantage, actually, and they slay the orcs. And Finrod uses some of his awesome magic to kind of make them look like the orcs. They take all the orcs' armor and clothing, and then he uses his magic to disguise them as orcs. And then they continue heading north in disguise.
So eventually we get to where they're traveling through the Pass of Sirion, and Sauron is on former Tol Sirion, Finrod's own tower.
If you'll remember from our Sauron episode, he took Tol Sirion with a whole host of Halloween-like characters.
Halloween animals, or Halloween-like creatures, vampires, giant serpents,
giant bats,
giant
werewolves.
werewolves.
He was particularly into the werewolves, I guess.
Yeah, and Sauron becomes aware of them, and he sends a whole group of Halloweenish creatures and orcs to capture them and bring them in for questioning.
He doesn't know who they are, but he basically sees a band. He's all aware, and he notices a band of orcs that isn't. They're traveling pretty quick, and they're not stopping to check in.
Yeah,
Suspicious. So he wants to. He still thinks that they're orcs when he gets them to come in, but as soon as he gets them in there, it's bad news.
And so he strips them of their disguises, and now ensues what I like to call the sing-song battle between Felagund and Sauron. So basically, this is a power of song. This is a fight of song, which in this, especially in the story of Beren and Lúthien, song is kind of synonymous with magic, and so there's this magic battle, and Finrod eventually loses, but he also in losing he is able to keep their identities secret. So he knows that they're an elf and a man, and
he strips them of their physical disguise, but he still doesn't know who these people are.
Right, and and if he did, he'd shit, right? Like if he knew he had Beren, son of Beren here, and Finrod in his dungeon. Oh man,
he'd be happy as a clown. So here, I just thought it'd be fun to throw out a quick excerpt from the Lay of Lúthien about the wizardry battle that they had between Sauron and Finrod Felagund. So this is as Sauron's trying to rip their disguises away, and Finrod is using his magic to counteract it. He chanted a song of wizardry, of piercing, opening, of treachery, revealing, uncovering, betraying. Then sudden Felagund there was swaying, sang in answer a song of staying, resisting, battling against power, of secrets kept, strength like a tower, and trust unbroken. Freedom, escape, of changing and of shifting shape, of snares eluded, broken traps, the prison opening, the chain that snaps. Backwards and forwards swaying their song, reeling and foundering, as ever more strong, the chanting swelled, Felagund fought, and all the magic and might he brought of elfiness into his words. Softly in the gloom they heard the birds, singing afar Nargothrond, the singing of the sea beyond the western world on sand of pearls in Elvenland. Then gloom gathered, darkness growing, in Valinor the red blood flowing, beside the sea where the Noldor slew, the foam riders in stealing drew, their white ships with their white sails, from lamplit havens the wind wails, the wolf howls, the ravens flee, the ice mutters in the mouths of the sea. The captives, sad and Angband, mourn. Thunder rumbles, the fires burn, and Finrod fell before the throne.
Damn, that was a hell of an excerpt. God, I love those lays, man. They're so freaking awesome. I could read them all day.
They're so much fun.
They're so great. Like, 'cause I was always a fan of poetry in school, but it's like Tolkien poetry.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. It's
Not only does he keep his rhyming and poetic structure really well, but he tells a story that's beautiful, and he tells it clearly and efficiently.
Yeah, exactly. It's not muddled at all. Like it's real easy to follow. Yeah, it's crazy.
If it was muddled at all, it's because I'm muddled speaking. I'm sorry.
But I mean, as far as like the story structure is not muddled.
Right.
Yeah.
So at this point, like we said, Sauron finally tears down Finrod, and his magic isn't strong enough, and he reveals that they're not orcs, but he still doesn't know who they are, and they won't talk. So Sauron, having plenty of tricks up his sleeve and having time and is just a general asshole, he throws all 12 of them into a dark pit where it's just pitch black.
And they're naked.
They're naked. And there's a werewolf down there somewhere in the dark.
They can just see its eyes every now and then.
And once in a while, it just pops out and grabs someone and devours them.
And devours them.
And it's, a horrifying fear tactic.
Right, yeah. And so one by one, eventually, all of them are dead except for Beren and Finrod. And Finrod's chained up or whatever, but he sees this wolf coming for Beren, and once again, fulfilling his oath, he summons all his strength, breaks his chains, and literally fucking tackles the werewolf and kills it with his bare hands. And
he's naked.
And he's naked, by the way. It literally says in Tolkien, I was just reading this earlier, it says he fought him with his hands and teeth. Hands and teeth, and he killed this werewolf. And sadly, as one would expect, some pretty bad wounds were inflicted on Finrod Felagund. And so Beren kind of takes him in his arms, and he says a couple words of farewell, and dies right there in Beren's arms. And Beren is just beside himself with grief.
Little did he know that this oath was going to kill him.
Right.
Finrod knew before he left that this was probably going to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how Beren couldn't imagine that this was going to kill most of them, but he's pretty beside himself.
And he did everything, and that's the thing about Finrod is, he knew that it was going to be the end of him, probably. And he did it anyway. And he fulfilled his oath at every chance he had. And what did he get for it?
Right.
Died naked in the dungeon.
I mean, at this point, everything's still pretty dark. Beren is still by himself in the black, naked, in Sauron's pit with all of his friends dead around him.
Just crying in a mess of gore.
It's a pretty low point for him.
It's a low point. And
in the Silmarillion itself,
it's a pretty low point.
It's a pretty low point.
And hey, guess what? That's actually the end of part 1. We're gonna leave you there. We're gonna leave you to stew in that awful moment. But I promise, the end of this story is a lot better. It's a lot more uplifting. It gets uplifting. Right now, you're thinking, "Wow, they said this was going to be an uplifting story." And now one of the greatest characters ever is dead naked in the dungeon. And they're just going to leave us.
Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger. Sorry. But yeah, that's the end of part 1.
That's the end of part 1 of this episode.
Of Beren and Lúthien.
Tune in. We're gonna cover the rest in episode 2, and let me tell you, shit gets pretty crazy.
It gets crazy. And it's already been pretty crazy. There's already some pretty crazy stuff. But it gets even crazier.
So thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah.
This has been Keep on Tolkien with Joel N.
And Danny J.
We'll see you next time.